Hello and welcome back to the Lant Draft League Invitational. Today we are going to be commentating solo on Jirachi and Lant's battle. As we see here, we see the two that both Lant and Jirachi will be using themselves. First of all, we have Skellig on Jirachi's team. This seems to be a fairly normal rain team. As we see, probably a Solber Skellig becoming, as well as the Rain Summon Deladrix, with things like potentially Oxidize or Pluvial, or maybe just a Health Amulet. We got some plant types in here to benefit from the rain. We can see such things such as like a Tease or a Driving Force, or maybe even a Bane of Haste on Oxidrake or Icy Ghoul, which will be able to take the speed control of the game and flip it around. On Lant's side, we are seeming to play the information game a lot more. You're having both Dragonine and Snagoop be wind abusers. This is a wind team, which means that this Whippledrift will most likely be Wind Summon, and this will most likely be Wind Globe. However, we do have a lot of air types to benefit from the speed boost. We're probably going to be seeing a Typhoon on Snagoop. And we're probably going to be seeing LFH have the replicate ability to be able to scout out the information. So hopefully this will be just a relatively good game from both teams here. I'd love to see how it ends out. And yeah, just waiting for them to set the lobby now. Suppose I could go a bit more. Oh, wait, here we go. Just waiting for Jirachi now. I'm going to quickly apologize if commentary might be a little bit dry. I am going solo today, so not going to be having anybody to communicate with. But it is a draft league game, so it's always going to be entertaining, as we never know what might be able to happen. I believe we're just waiting for Jirachi to come in here and maybe finish recording an intro of his own. Which, hey, respect, gotta get it somehow. What? I don't believe that Lant has a terrifying or petrifying user on their team, so we're probably going to be seeing something such as a Bitter Touch come from the Skellig. Again, probably Rain Summon, Oxidize, probably Power Draw coming from the Icy Ghoul, considering to get that damage output. Might be seeing a Swampy come from the Malmerk, just to be able to lower the speed a little bit more. Probably not also, although he's probably not going to be a part of the Bane of Haste side of this if Jirachi does decide to bring Bane of Haste. Pluvial Parasol, my bad, is almost unkillable in the rain when paired with Health Amulet, but then again, so is Malmerk, so both of these are fighting for the Health Amulet spot, and Banfino just being an amazing supporter all around. However, we also have Lant's team here, which is really playing the game out the wind. They're really relying on that wind to be able to just do really good overall. Of course, Oxydrake's really good into this team, being able to benefit from the wind on his own, not needing the rain from his side to technically benefit from the field conditions. Although, it'd be probably in Jirachi's best interest to not have the wind set up, as that's going to give 4 air types on Lant's team the ability to just get a 25% speed boost. That's going to give Snagoop a 25% damage boost on all of its toxic type moves. So it's going to be very threatening onto both the of course, Snagoop's very powerful here because it is almost a mono water team coming from Jirachi. If we look at this again, everything except for Oxydrake and Icy are water types. So Toxic is very effective into his team. Jirachi's going to have to do a lot of preparation to be able to counter it, which probably means that we're going to be seeing a lot of plays from Icy is very strong into the Snagoop and just Toxic types in general, being surprisingly bulky, although with that energy stat, it's not going to be doing much unless it is Expertise, to which it will get a 25% reduction on all of its energy reduction on all of its moves. However, I do believe that it's going to be Power Jaw, considering that you will get that strong damage output on moves such as Chili Chomp or Blaze Chomp that's going to be able to take down the air types of Lant's team. Because Lant can only hold one Frost Pearl. And we actually see the battle starting now. See Jirachi sending out Icy and Oxydrake, and Sherbot and Snagoop coming straight from Lant's side. Snagoop's not actually looking all that hot here, considering that there are 2 air resists, 1 toxic resist, so even if the wind is set up, it's going to be a very difficult game. One of these could have Provoke. I don't believe Sherbot learns Provoke, but Snagoop might. But Icicle is still looking very powerful, even if it is incredibly slow. It can still go for some serious damage with Chili Chomp or Blaze Chomp right now. Both super effective or quad super effective moves onto the side of Lant's team. However, Sherbot is going to be able to weaken all of the defenses of Jirachi's side with the move Metal Strike, although this could be protected by a safeguard from Oxydrake's side. So this is a very safe lead coming from Jirachi. Snagoop does, in fact, swap out on Lant's side as they go into Luminami, and Sherbot using Dodge, just using up a turn of that. Using up a turn of the wind. However, Icicle is setting up Icicle traps, punching all of the air types that are on Lant's team. And I doubt Lant brought removal, so this is... Oh. And Jirachi crashed. Here we go again. Mild interruption, but we should be having same lead, same turn ones. I've typed it out in the draft group chat. So, oh. What the hell is going on? Apologies here, but Jirachi seems to be having some, maybe, internet issues. I'm severely confused. And it seems as if my Dream Teams has crashed. What the hell? Why? Why? Bit of some malfunctions. Ay ay ay. And here we go. Okay. We're just going to be seeing the same turn 1 come from each side of both Lant and Jirachi, which means we're going to end the turn with no damage being done, but Luminami and Snagoot, not Luminami and Snagoot, Luminami and Sherbot on Lant's side, and then with Icicle Trap set up, and then Icicle and Oxdrake on Jirachi's side. Wind is going to be up, and this first turn should be relatively quick. So, here we go. The swap into the Luminami, Sherbot using dodge, Icicle Traps being set up, and Oxdrake going for the driving force into Sherbot. Not much has been revealed from Lant's side outside of one of his back Lumions and the dodge on Sherbot. However, I would still say that Jirachi is still incredibly powerful in this situation, knowing what Lant has in the back, and also with the extreme pressure of Oxdrake right now, facing down a mixed attacker and a ranged attacker. With that 50%, is it 50? I'm pretty sure it's 50% range defense boost from the Oxidize ability. Sherbot goes for Deja Vu into the Icy Ghoul, and Luminami goes for Radiant Rush, but it misses, as Oxdrake goes for Driving Force, dealing over half, almost 3/4 to the Sherbot, bringing out presumably one of the air types, bringing out Snagoot, dealing about 1/4 of the HP. Icicle's trying to set up Icicle Traps again due to the Deja Vu, but ultimately failing. Icicle probably being forced to swap now, and this is not very good for Jirachi, considering that you are going to be swapping into one of your water types, which is going to be weak to the 25% damage boosted toxic type attacks from this Snagoot. 25% damage boosted because of the wind giving that boost to toxic type attacks. However, Oxdrake is still very powerful, although we do know that Luminami does have the Radiant Rush, so it will be able to get some really good damage onto this Oxdrake. However, Sherbot also doesn't have its doubled speed from the Wind Globe anymore. Let's see Jirachi take out their Icicle going into Deladrix, as Snagoot does use Muck Blast onto the Deladrix, but it hangs on with its Clutch Plushie, and Luminami goes for Radiant Rush into the Oxdrake, dealing over half. But Oxdrake does have the Milkshake, healing it to about 25%, 75%, 75% HP, as we see the Elephage come out. Gonna copy the Deladrix's ability, I'm pretty sure. No, it copies Oxidize. So it is now confirmed that Oxidize is the ability of Oxdrake, as what was expected due to the Wind and the Rain Wars being around. Question for me is, what is this Deladrix's speed tier? We know that it's Clutch Plushie, so we know that it was a relatively safe swap. However, Snagoot going for Provoke onto the Oxdrake, as Deladrix does go for the Hydro Blast, not picking up a KO and only doing about half to the Deladrix. And Elephage does pick up the KO onto the Deladrix itself. Oxdrake does go for the Driving Force, forcing Luminami back in. Probably see the Icy Ghoul come back in for Jirachi here, but it is currently 4-3 in terms of land. As actually we see the Skellig coming out. Skellig coming out in front of the light type Luminami that has the very powerful move of Radiant Rush. Radiant Rush very threatening to both Oxdrake and Skellig. And we do see the Soul Burst go onto the Skellig. putting it into its Sea Scourge form, make sure that it outspeeds everything on the field. But will it be able to pick up a KO onto the Luminami, or does it just target the Snagoop? Sea Scourge being very threatening to both of Lant Lumians. Snagoop going for dodge, as Skellig uses a Wave Wrecker into the Snagoop, not picking up anything. As Oxydrake goes for Vice Jaws into the Luminami. Luminami going for Radiant Rush into the Skellig, dealing over half of its HP. And Luminami is just looking like a tank here, being able to tank multiple hits from everything. Skellig going for Wave Wrecker into the Snagoop, picking up the KO, as Luminami uses Radiant Rush into the Oxydrake this time, dealing over 50% as Oxydrake uses Driving Force, forcing it just to take that little bit more chip. Elphage coming back out, replicating Rain Rush, meaning that it has doubled speed right now. So this is still incredibly threatening by chance. Luminami coming back out, taking that resisted Icicle Traps chip. However, I believe Elphage is currently the fastest thing on the field, being able to copy the Rain Rush coming from Skellig. And Oxydrake is out of energy actually, so it won't be able to go for another move unless it's a very low base power move, such as Barbs. I don't know why you'd want Barbs in this endgame, considering that nothing can even swap. You do see Skellig going for a quick and easy dodge as Elevage goes for Thunder Strike. Skellig dodges the move, and Luminami goes for Thunder Chomp into the Oxydrake, not picking up the KO, but it does get the flinch. Super unlucky there, coming from the Oxydrake. Well, I doubt that flinch would have done anything major. It could have helped pick up KO onto the Elphage, as Elphage does go for Thunder Strike into the Skellig. Not picking up a KO, actually. Wave Wrecker going into Elphage, and now it is a one-man army. Luminami versus Sea Scourge Skellig, and an Ice School. Luminami is out of energy, so it can go for the 50-50 flail. Actually, I lied. I forgot. Sherbot is still here. Sherbot can be taking super effective hits. And actually, no, it is not. It is currently the fastest thing on the field, I believe. I do not believe Silver Skellig outspeeds this. But we do have to have the constant reminder of Luminami. Luminami's Radiant Rush being super effective against everything that Jirachi has on the field right now. Luminami decides to wait out this turn as Sherbot goes for a Deep Freeze onto the Skellig, picking up the KO. As Icicle uses Bane of Haste, casting an Ancient Curse and reversing all of the speed order. Icicle is now the fastest thing on the field, which means that it'll be able to go for maybe a Blaze Chomp onto the Sherbot, maybe a Thunder Chomp onto the Luminami, which we do see happen, dealing minimal damage, but chip is chip. Radiant Rush dealing over 50%. Sherbot using Metal Shriek, not even needing it. Jirachi's only hope right now is just for Radiant Rush to miss, or for Thunder Chomp to get the flinch. That is just about the only thing that Jirachi can hope for in terms of this. Thunder Chomp dropping Luminami down, as Luminami goes for Wave Wrecker, not having enough energy for the Radiant Rush, picking up the KO. What a first game coming from both Atlantean 547 and JK Jirachi. I wonder what adjustments we're going to have to see from both of them, because again, Snagoop is very, very threatening into Jirachi's team, but it was handled almost perfectly coming from Jirachi with the Icicle Traps, making sure that it is not being set up well. However, Luminami does seem to be the real thorn that's, like, going against Jirachi. as it is extremely bulky, extremely hard to pick up a KO, and doing deceptively a lot of damage. Facing off against the many ranged attackers of Jirachi, or the many melee attackers of Jirachi, this is probably melee invested, as the only ranged attackers we do see are Banfino and Delatrix. We might see Jirachi bring the Banfino into this matchup, considering that he's probably going to need it to be able to pick up the KO onto the Luminami much easier than he did before. Extremely threatening switches can be heard from both sides here. As we see the battle do start, Aolyvul and Malamurk coming up, the other plant and water type, versus Snagoop and Sherbot once again. We can see many different things here. We can see a Chili Chomp, we can see a Blaze Chomp, we can see a Dodge. We can maybe even see Icicle Traps coming out if we do see Malamurk go for a Dodge. Sherbot using Deep Freeze. Snagoop using Provoke onto the Aolyvul, making sure that it cannot set up any Icicle Traps. But no, it actually uses Icicle Fangs, and Snagoop hangs on with its Clutch Plushie, making sure that it gets to live for another turn. Malamurk looking extremely rough here. Not necessarily knowing what to do, as it is staring down two Lumians that have quad super effective moves, Snagoop with the Muck Blast, and Sherbot with the Deep Freeze. However, Aolyvul here is staring down both of these, to see Oxydrake swapping and gaining the 50% melee defense, not melee defense, ranged defense boost. Metal Shriek coming from the Sherbot, minusing the defenses of both of them by 1. However, that is not doing nearly as much as anybody really thinks it is, as there's still a 50% boost from the Oxydrake. Both of Lant's Lumians are at extremely low HP right now. Snagoop literally on 1 HP, any attack will be able to take it out, meaning that it cannot swap, because that will be risking Aolyvul setting up the Icicle Traps, which would just kill it on the spot. Sherbot also not being able to do much in this situation, being stared down by Power Jaw's boosted Thunder Chomp, going into the super effective Sherbot. We do see Sherbot go for a dodge. You see Snagoop also go for a dodge. Both of Lance Lumians are going for a dodge, as Oxydrake goes for a Safeguard, protecting it from the Metal Shriek, and Aolyvul goes for Thunder Chomp into the Sherbot. The wind does die down. Aolyvul has calmed down enough to use support moves. Question is, will we be seeing Lant have their last hope of Snagoop be used on an attack, or will we see it be used on Provoke onto the Aolyvul once again, making sure that it is not being able to set up any more Icicle Traps? Sherbot using Deja Vu onto the Oxydrake, which is probably what it was planning to do anyways. Just to be safe, Muck Blast going onto the Oxydrake, not picking up any KOs, as we see Thunder Chomp go into the Snagoop. And Safeguard coming back, meaning that it did probably go for the Driving Force, considering that it moved last in this turn. Luminami is coming right back up. And this is where we're going to be seeing... Apologies. This is probably where we're going to be seeing the Malamurk shine here. Having that plant typing, having those super effective attacks into the Luminami. As we do see Oxydrake switch into the Banfino actually, and Icy will swap into the Malamurk. Both plant and water types are on the field. As we see Deep Freeze go onto the Banfino, picking up the one-hit knockout. We see Radiant Rush go into the Malamurk, not dealing any damage. We could see either Aolyvul or Oxydrake come in and potentially set up a Bane of Haste, making Malamurk the fastest thing on the field. However, will it be able to do that without Malamurk dying? Malamurk does have dodge, that means you are vulnerable to the next turn. However, if you do get the Bane of Haste, Aolyvul is also one of the fastest things, meaning that it will be able to pick up the KO onto the Sherbot. See, Radiant Rush missing the Aolyvul as Malamurk goes for a Nature's Force onto the Luminami, dealing just over half. Swampy lowering the speed and the range defense, as Aolyvul does go for Bane of Haste, making sure that a double KO is extremely likely to happen, actually. Even if Fanfino had died on the immediate swap-in, Malamurk is still extremely threatening with those ranged planet moves, such as Nature's Force or maybe a Life Drain coming out. Aolyvul swapping into the Oxydrake, as Luminami goes for a Radiant Rush, stacking the Oxydrake to be able to get a potentially free swap-in? But does this not just let Malamurk get killed? I'm excited to see. No! Sherbot goes for a Metal Shriek. It does not go for a Deep Freeze into the Malamurk. It does pick up those defense drops on both sides. Aolyvul is going to be coming back in here with the Sherbot. Wind Summon, raising the speed of Whippleshift, which is not what you want inside of Bane of Haste. Lant probably just trying to stall out the most of Bane of Haste that he can. Aolyvul almost out of energy though, although Malamurk is still at a very healthy amount of health and energy. Aolyvul lets its guard down to rest, knowing that it is not at much fault here, as we do see a Marsh Wave come from the Malamurk, lowering the range defense of both of the Lumians. Seeing Whippledrift go for a Nature's Force into the Aolyvul with a Blossom Shell, meaning that it is not Frost Pearl, which means that it will be doing a lot of damage. However, Deep Freeze coming from the Sherbot onto the Malamurk, picking up the one-hit KO and the critical hit. Whether that critical hit actually matters or not is up to debate, but it sure is a shame that it happened anyways. Sherbot letting its guard down to rest, knowing that it is dead to almost any attack anyways. Whippledrift going for a dodge. We see Aolyvul go for a Icicle Fangs into the Whippledrift that is dodging, letting Sherbot get all of its energy back for free. I don't know why Jirachi seems to be neglecting the Sherbot, knowing that it is extremely dangerous. Whippledrift goes for a double dodge, but it fails. Aolyvul goes for Icicle Fangs into the Whippledrift, picking up the one-hit KO with the critical hit. However, Sherbot uses Metal Shriek, actually, potentially to pick up a KO of its own later on. Maybe it has a secret fifth move, but actually, no. The Bane of Haste Curse has now ended, meaning that the last... Oh, no, that is... Sherbot is the last Lumion of Lance. Apologies here. But Thunder Chomp from the Aolyvul just picking up the KO onto Sherbot, and it is 1-1 going into the game 3, the tiebreaker set. The tiebreaker game for this set. Knowing that even if that lead was very good for Lant, he was in a quite bad position the majority of it. And even if there was a one-hit KO onto both of the words are not wording. Even if he did pick up a one-hit KO onto both of the plant and water types from Jirachi, or onto Jirachi, it still had such a bad position. Bane of Haste was so detrimental that it didn't matter in the long run anyways. So what differences we'll be seeing from either side. Also, Lant has been missing a lot of their Radiant rushes. So Lant better hope that that does not happen this time around. I mean, the Lant is going to be using that as his excuse of why he lost. Drake and Icicle going into the Elephage and Luminami. Elephage is replicating Oxidize from the Oxidrake. Let's see Luminami being immediately threatening. However, it seems to just be a free Bane of Haste coming on with the Icicle, or a free Icicle Trap, and Oxidrake's actually going to set up the Bane of Haste. Either one works. Oxidrake using Provoke onto the Icicle, as Luminami uses Radiant Rush onto the Icicle itself. And that Icicle is one of the only ways that Lant has to be able to deal with everything that, or that Jirachi has to be able to deal with everything that Lant does. These Snagoop do come out. Elephage, not Elephage. Icicle not being able to use either Icicle Traps or Bane of Haste, leaving it with only Icicle Fangs and Thunder Chomp as its options here. However, it is staring down the Ice Weak Snagoop, as Snagoop goes for a dodge. Elephage goes for a Magnify. This could get spicy here. Icicle goes for a Icicle Fang onto the Elephage. It does not work, actually. Or it does not deal over half. Driving Force going into the Snagoop from the Oxidrake as Snagoop dodges the attack. Snagoop going for a Muck Blast onto the Icicle. It's not very effective. Thunder Strike with the +2 boost going into the Icicle, and it picks up the K. It does not pick up the KO. It is on a sliver of HP. Probably the exact same amount of HP that Snagoop is on now, with the Clutch plushie being activated. Driving Force from Oxidrake bringing out the Luminami. Icicle has now calmed down enough to use support moves. Now, while Icicle is on very, very low HP, it cannot be neglected under any circumstances. It can set up the Bane of Haste that will turn this game around as we think. Snagoop being on 1 HP is also very crucial, meaning that it will be able to get off one more attack no matter what happens, unless somehow, someway, they dodge the move. But it is just so very unlikely that it happens, considering that I doubt it's Typhoon. And I doubt it's going to be using Typhoon. It actually goes for a dodge. As Oxidrake goes for a Vice Jaws into Snagoop, Snagoop dodges the move. Luminami goes for a Thunder Chomp into the Icicle, making sure that it does not use as much energy as it would if it had Radiant Rush. Jirachi probably bringing in something else that he has. Bringing up the Banfino. Banfino is probably the fastest thing on this field unless it is being run slowly. Luminami being very threatened by this Banfino. In fact, a Tsunami is more threatening than it may seem. Being able to pick up the KO and get some chip onto the Luminami, because chip is chip. 1 HP, as we saw with the Icicle, it's the difference between life and death in this game. Maroon coming from the Banfino onto the Snagoop as Luminami goes for a Radiant Rush onto the Oxidrake, healing over 50% HP. Milkshake from Oxidrake healing above 50% HP. As he Driving Force to go into the Luminami, bring out the Elephage. As we'll probably be... You see, Elephage replicates Sly, actually, not being Bully or Conspire. Although Conspire is bugged right now, so I can understand Jirachi not wanting to use Conspire. Sherbot coming out, getting that doubled speed under the Strong Gust because of its Sugar Rush ability. However, this Elephage had replicated Sly and not Oxidized, so it does not get the 50% boost from the wind. Meaning that Banfino can still kill this in one hit, with a one-hit knockout before it gets anything started up. However, Sherbot is still looking threatening with a potential deep freeze on the board going into Banfino. Sherbot using dodge, actually. Banfino using Maroon onto the Elephage, getting the KO. It is now 2 Lumions left on Lant's side, and 3 on Jirachi if I counted right, which I haven't been all day. Forgive me, but Luminami coming back out for Lant. Oxdrake seems to be out of energy, but not out of time. Banfino, it might be out of time for, though. As unless it is boots for any specific reason, Deep Freeze will just be picking up the one-hit knockout. Oxdrake not going for dodge, but instead just taking the Radiant Rush, and does have enough HP to do something. Going for the Driving Force into the Sherbot, dealing a lot of HP. That is probably over 75% now that I get another look at it, as Malamurk does come out. Now, as threatening as Malamurk does seem, it will just get OHKO'd by a Sherbot Deep Freeze, so Sherbot plus Luminami is everything that Lant had needed for this endgame. Radiant Rush going into Oxdrake, and Deep Freeze going into the Malamurk. Unless Jirachi can somehow find a way out of this, which I don't think is possible. This seems to be a game 1 and set 1 for Lant. Oxdrake is out of energy on red HP, facing down the super effective moves of Luminami. And while yes, it does have that 50% range boost, it will be going for a flail, it seems. Luminami goes for a Mega Chomp onto the Oxdrake, not picking up the KO. As we see Nature's Force go onto the Luminami as Oxdrake flinches? I'm so confused. Oxdrake letting its guard down to rest. Malamurk using dodge. Luminami going for a Mega Chomp onto the Malamurk. Malamurk dodges. Luminami is now out of energy. It might have one more Mega Chomp left, but Luminami is waiting out this turn. Oxdrake using Vice Jaws, getting the critical hit. That critical hit is not doing much though. Nature's Force doing a lot. Swampy lowering the speed, making sure that Oxdrake is now faster, I believe. Unless it is speed invested, Oxdrake is faster. Malamurk goes for a dodge. Oxdrake uses Vice Jaws. Chip is Chip, friends. Mega Chomp coming from Luminami onto the dodging Malamurk, not picking up the KO as well. Oxdrake uses Vice Jaws, still not picking up a KO. So many things have lived on 1 HP this game, but Nature's Force from the Malamurk does do it in the end. That is all for today. It is a 2-1 set 1 from Jirachi. Even though that endgame seemed unlosable for Lant, Jirachi somehow found a way to come out on top. Jirachi is still undefeated in this game. Thank you very much for coming.